from how tightly she clutched it. Inside were pages that had rewritten her existence in a matter of seconds. Stage 3, lymphoma. A few words on a piece of paper, yet they had the weight of an avalanche. Asterisk, she had entered the hospital praying for hope, any hope at all. Instead, she was met by a world that felt colder than the November sky outside. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like trapped insects. The receptionist typed in a steady rhythm, eyes fixed on her screen, and behind the counter stood a doctor with a crisp white coat and a stare that had long forgotten how to soften. Asterisk, we cannot begin treatment without full payment up front, the doctor repeated, her tone efficient, clipped, and painfully indifferent. To her, it was policy. To Mara, it was a sentence. Asterisk, the word struck her harder than the diagnosis itself. Hope didn't die quickly, it eroded, piece by piece, until all that was left was the emptiness she felt now. Asterisk, Mara sat in her wheelchair, tears slipping down her pale cheeks without her even noticing. She no longer had the strength to hold them back. Her father, Harold, stood beside her. His shoulders, once broad and sturdy from decades of manual labor, trembled beneath his worn jacket. He had sold nearly everything of value, their family truck, his tools, even her late mother's wedding ring. But it wasn't enough. It was never enough. Asterisk, we'll come back, he whispered, voice cracking like thin ice. His hand rested on Mara's shoulder, warm but helpless. Asterisk, a nearby nurse briefly glanced their way, then looked down as if the sight of their suffering was too heavy to witness. Asterisk, Harold turned the wheelchair toward the entrance, and Mara forced herself to look anywhere but at the doctor. As they rolled closer to the sliding doors, she caught her reflection, a tired woman in her early 30s, wrapped in faded clothing, the scarf hiding her thinning hair. She looked like a shadow of someone she used to know, a woman who once painted sunsets for fun, a woman who laughed loudly and lived freely. Asterisk, outside, the drizzle made the parking lot shine with bleak reflections. Harold pushed her down the sloping driveway. Mara felt humiliation knowing at her this hospital was supposed to save lives, yet it had decided hers wasn't worth the effort. Asterisk, but something she didn't notice was the group across the lot. Under the overhang of a small diner stood several bikers, their leather jackets darkened by the rain. Among them was a broad man in his 50s, Rex Dalton. His presence was commanding, gray beard, square jaw, and eyes that saw far more than most people realized. Asterisk, Rex led the Iron Hearts Brotherhood, a motorcycle club known less for trouble and more for charity. They raised money for terminally ill kids, supported veterans, and helped families in crisis. To outsiders, they looked rough and intimidating, but those who knew them understood their compassion ran deep. Asterisk, as Harold pushed the wheelchair over a small bump, Mara's folders slipped from her lap, pages scattered across the wet pavement. Harold stooped down quickly, scrambling to gather them before they soaked through. Rex stepped forward instinctively. Asterisk, let me help, he muttered, picking up several pages. Asterisk, one page caught his attention, the printed estimate of chemotherapy costs, stamped with decline due to insufficient payment. Asterisk, he looked from the page to Mara. Her eyes were hollow, red-rimmed, and filled with a quiet despair that settled in his heart like a heavy stone. Asterisk, he didn't speak. He just handed Harold the last page as gently as if it were glass. Asterisk, later, as the old van carrying Mara and Harold pulled away, Rex stood in the rain, jaw clenched. He had seen suffering before plenty, but this woman's quiet surrender hit him in a place he didn't expect. Asterisk, that night, he called his entire crew. Asterisk, we've helped people before, he told them, but this one we're not letting her fight alone, not while any of us are still breathing. Asterisk, nobody argued. They never did when Rex spoke like that. Asterisk, by dawn, they had pooled donations, hosted a midnight fundraiser at their clubhouse, sold extra gear, chipped in from savings, and gathered every dollar they could. The envelope they filled wasn't neated, was thick, damp from rain, held together with a rubber band, but it was enough. Asterisk, the next morning, the hospital lobby looked the same as always, sterile, busy, indifferent, until the deep rumble of engines echoed like thunder. Asterisk, the automatic doors opened wide, and the Iron Hearts Brotherhood walked in. 6 bikers, shoulders broad, boots heavy, every head turned. Asterisk, the doctor behind the counter stiffened. Can I help you? She asked, trying to look brave but sounding anything but. Asterisk, Rex stepped forward. You could have helped someone yesterday, he said evenly, but you didn't. Asterisk, the doctor blinked, confused, until Mara and Harold entered behind the bikers summoned by Rex earlier. Mara gasped softly when she recognized the men from the diner. Asterisk, we're here to make sure she gets her treatment, Rex said, setting the bulging envelope on the counter. Paid in full. Asterisk, a hush fell over the lobby. The nurse behind the desk stared as though witnessing a miracle. The doctor opened her mouth, perhaps to object, but Rex's gaze held firm. Asterisk, every hour you delay, he said quietly, is a life slipping away. Asterisk, the bikers stepped closer, forming a protective wall behind Mara. Not threatening, just unyielding. Even the security guards hesitated. Sensing the overwhelming weight of what was happening, Asterisk, something shifted in the doctor's expression. an uncomfortable mix of shame and realization. She nodded to the nurse. "Prepare the patient." Mara was wheeled down the hallway, tears streaming freely now. The bikers followed, their footsteps echoing through the sterile corridor. For the first time in months, Mara felt warmth not physical, but the kind born from people refusing to let her fall through the cracks. Over the next several weeks, the Ironheart's brotherhood became part of her life. They visited often, turning gloomy afternoons into bursts of laughter. They brought meals, fixed Harold's van, played guitar in her room, and even painted murals in the children's oncology ward. Rex told her stories about the road sunsets seen from mountain highways, strangers who became family, lessons learned the hard way. And slowly, the colors began returning to Mara's world. When her final chemotherapy session ended months later, the hospital parking lot was filled with motorcycles, dozens of them, engines roaring like a celebration. Mara stepped outside, thinner but glowing. She wore a beanie embroidered with the Iron Heart symbol, a gift from the crew. "You didn't just save my life," she whispered to Rex. "You brought my faith in humanity back." The doctor who had once turned her away stood nearby, remorse written all over her face. She quietly apologized. Mara simply said, "Then don't turn anyone away again." For once. The doctor nodded with understanding. And as the roar of motorcycles filled the air, Mara realized that sometimes angels didn't have wings, they had leather jackets, steel boots, and hearts loud enough to be heard from miles away.